Okay.
Hello, everybody. It's your girl, Valerie, your chocolate smoothie with Sister Talk with Valerie, and my alarm is going off. And good to see y'all tonight. Guess who we have with us tonight? We have Miss Miasha Gilliam L., who is the inspiration behind our new movie. Miasha, I'll be calling this, my glasses are crooked. I'll be calling the movie Miracles Happen, Miracles. What is the official title?
The official title is Miracles of the Life.
Miracles of Life.
Yes.
Woo, woo. So we are so excited to have you here with us, and we're just going to talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
And I think one of the reasons why I feel like this is such an important subject, right? Because um, this is so much more than about one particular thing, right?
Right. Right.
This is a spiritual. Oh, I lost your visual, Maisha.
Oh, okay. There we go.
This is about it's about a spiritual journey. So I want you to start by kind of telling people what was sort of the preface one that started you to write the book, and then just talk about really what happened and why this project is so important to you.
Okay. Um, what happened? I actually reached out and I had an incident to
I think
happen in.
Maisha, we're losing some audio when you're talking, so I'm gonna mute myself until you are finished talking, just in case that's one of the reasons.
Okay. Let me know if it gets better. One of the inspirations behind me wanting to do this film is because in 2012, I had the pregnancy induced cardiomyopathy where my heart swelled and forgot to go back down. And I ended up being on a ventilator for 3 days of my life. The first 2 days, I wasn't breathing on my own at all. And then on the third day, they kind of weaned me off of the ventilator. And so I had been in prayer to God, asking Him, okay, so now that I survived this, what is it that you want me to do with this story? um, what direction am I to go in? What's going to happen with it? Was it just for me to go to church and basically give my testimony? How is it going to affect the lives of other people when I share it? How can I make this something more impactful than just me literally testifying when I go to church about it? And so, that's when the idea came about the film. And then my second question was, we have an epidemic into play now, and a pandemic in play of COVID. So, I had this idea about the film and God laid it on my heart. Okay, well, this can be a broad thing. And I'm like, Lord, you have a sense of humor. During a pandemic, you would like me to do a film. And so I was like, okay, well, if this is what you want me to do, I'm a person that really believes that the sky is not the limit, that God is limitless. And when He wants you to do something, He will align everything for you to be able to do it successfully. And so I think I had met you once, but not really officially. I was kind of introduced to you like, hi, this is Valerie. And that was kind of it. And I think, if I remember correctly, that was at like something that Mark had given at the Vision Lounge, or either it was at Tayshawn's opening for his album. It was one of those two things. And I talked to Tayshawn about wanting to do the film, and he said, you need to call Valerie. And so I think that's when I called. We had that conversation. There were certain things that happened during that conversation that let me definitely know that it was God. And you were right on board. And then the next thing I know, I got the gift of Kia, and Kia came along and Kia was on board. And it just was like history after that, because Kia introduced clairvoyance. I mean, we went through another videographer, but God quickly moved that person to the side and clairvoyance came on board. And the best part is that God aligned all of it. And the way that God was just so strategic in doing that, even down to my own cardiologist, not only, wanting to help with the film, but actually to play himself, and taking time out of his schedule, and getting us the opportunity to get the hospital and all those other things. So that was the whole point behind it, is to highlight miracles in the African American community. I feel comfortable with saying that, because a lot of the films that are out now, they don't highlight miracles in the African American community. Can you still hear me? You're frozen. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Oh, because I was doing a whole lot of talking, thinking that I was not on mute, but I was on mute. So what I said, y'all, is that Miasha and I talked about doing some stories, because we've seen certain stories like Heaven Can Wait and Heaven is Real, and even the story of the young lady, the little girl who fell from a tree and she had a near death experience, but don't really see a lot of that in the African American community.
Right, right.
So, one of the things that I also wanted to spotlight is cardiomyopathy. And that kind of it hits home for me because my daughter Talia was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy when she was pregnant with her first child, my grandson. And we were like, what? Because I've never heard anything about it before. But what the doctor told us is that it happens to a lot of African American women, and it usually happens either post um, postpartum or before, while they're pregnant or after. And if you don't know the signs or what to look for, it can be fatal. And that's what happened to you, Maisha.
First of all, it's kind of rare. It is also known as a silent killer. And that's because most people know about preeclampsia, which is the high blood pressure part of it. But a lot of people don't know that that's what actually leads to the heart swelling. Um, the heart swells when we're pregnant because we have to have enough blood to go through for the baby as well as ourselves. And so our blood capacity doubles and it causes our heart to enlarge, but it's supposed to go back down after the delivery of the baby. And it doesn't do that with the cardiomyopathy. The heart is smart and slow at the same time. So it thinks by getting larger, it's compensating for the amount of blood that's going through it. And it just forgets to go back down to the regular size because once it swells, it's difficult for that muscle to shrink back down. And I found out that I was having something going on because during this pregnancy, I was going to the high risk clinic. And I noticed that after 5 children, same exact kind of pregnancies, nothing different took place. But in this pregnancy, I started to have swollen ankles, which was totally out of the norm for me. I would have dizziness. I would feel like I had indigestion at times. At weird times, I didn't even have to eat anything, but I would feel like I had indigestion or have like gas, like burping and things like that going on. And so I brought it to the attention of the physician. And of course, because I'm a nurse, they thought I was overreacting. They thought that because I knew the signs and symptoms of things, that I was just taking that upon myself and over exaggerating symptoms and doing things like that, what sometimes happens if you're a medical professional and you go in with an issue. I kept telling them, no, this is not in my head, basically, because that's what you're saying to me. This is something that is actually different. All patients are different. I understand that pregnancies are different, but this is total. You have three things that are out of the norm for me. So, I think you really need to be investigating this. Nevertheless, they did not pay me any attention. They kept brushing me off every doctor's visit. And I felt it was progressively getting worse, but I didn't know it. And that's why it's called the silent killer, because my blood pressure was consistently elevating. And though I might have had a headache or whatever, those are the times when my blood pressure was probably elevated at the highest. And I just didn't realize it because I had these people telling me, you're okay, you're fine. And I wasn't bothering to check my blood pressure myself because I trusted them because it was a high risk clinic. So those were some of the warning signs that I had preemptively to tell me, hey, something's not right.
And the fact that you are at least in the medical field gave you
Mm-hmm.
some indication that hey, something else needs to be done. But
Right,
like with my daughter, for instance, she had not had a history of heart condition at all. But
right.
after she, probably towards the end, she would say to me, Mom, when I lay down, I feel like I'm drowning. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought because she, had gained a lot of weight during pregnancy, I was like, okay, we'll just sleep with a pillow. Really didn't
Yeah.
think about it. And then afterwards, it got progressively worse after she delivered the baby. And she had so much fluid on her that they had to admit her, and they were just draining like buckets and buckets of fluid from her. But even with that, Miasha, they told us the name of it, but they didn't. The doctor said, yeah, this happens to African American women. It's rare, but it happens. He told us when. And the only thing that they said to her was, you shouldn't get pregnant again for at least 2 years.
Yeah, they said the same thing to me.
Did they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she got pregnant again. She had twins, and she gained the weight, like had the fluid with the twins, but not nothing as severe. But then with the third pregnancy, she started hemorrhaging. Like she
Wow.
kept just blood. After she had the baby, she was sitting in the car and just started gushing blood, like buckets of blood, buckets of blood. And they were saying, we don't know why. They did the DNC, they did everything, and they kept saying, we don't know why. All they kept doing was giving her transfusions. Like she would lose the blood, they would give her transfusions, but they couldn't tell like what is really going on. And that's why it's so important, like, especially with us, people of color.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we go through stuff, either the medical profession thinks we're exaggerating or we don't know what we're talking about. And that's why it's so important to get two or three opinions and really like shout if you have to, because
Yeah.
it's our health. We know even if you're famous, like with Serena, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. We still have things that we have to be verbal about.
Yeah, we have to be our own advocates. And it's really sad because we depend on the medical professionals, our doctors and our nurses, to really hear us out and not just make generalized treatment decisions when it comes to us, because we're all individuals. And you can't just look at a textbook and base my signs and symptoms off of that textbook. You have to know me as an individual and my history. And that's one of the reasons why we take a history and a physical from individuals, so we can know the background. But if you're not going to utilize that, then what is really the point? Because you're not going to know the patient and you're not going to be able to give that individualized care. So we have to be our own advocates a lot of times.
Absolutely. And if we feel like we're not empowered to advocate for ourselves, then there are people out here like community health workers, maybe even it's a friend that can advocate on your behalf. Because we're talking about life and death, you know, we're talking about life and death. So I don't want to give a whole lot of the movie, but I do want to give some teasers. So one of the things I want to talk about is the day. So you had your baby, you know,
Yeah.
you thought some things were going on and that it would impact the baby. Talk to us first before you take us to that day about some of the ways in which that spiritual piece where God was kind of speaking to you and telling you some things, and how, you know, because sometimes people, we say we hear from God and people are like, well, does he talk to you? Like, yeah, I'm talking to you. So tell us about your experience with that.
Okay, from my experience, a lot of people have lost faith in the belief that God can audibly speak to you. And so they don't get to hear him speaking because they've lost faith in it and they don't believe. And so, like I said, I'm just one of those crazy believers that am open to whatever way God wants to speak to me. And so he generally will speak to me because that's my expectation. That's what I expect. And he knows that I'm not like an avid reader. I've been through so much schooling that I can't stand reading like that. So he's not gonna, if I read my scriptures and I study my scriptures and everything, but the best way to me is audibly. So I'm just the type of person, and God knows that. And so during the time that I was pregnant, I was about 8 months pregnant, and I had the dream, and God showed me, kind of painted a picture for me of what was to come. I didn't see all of the details, but I kind of knew and I could draw a conclusion from what I saw as to what was going to take place. So I had a little bit of preparation because God knows that I am a person that does not like to be unprepared for things. He knows that I will go into panic mode and I will mess everything up. So he's like, let me prepare her. Let me, give her a little inkling here so she won't panic, and she could be about my business or whatever. And so I had the dream, and then several other things happened to lead up to the point to which that crisis happened. I went to church, and had somebody to speak over me that I absolutely didn't know. I had a mother come to the church from another visiting church and speak over me again. And I'm starting to think to myself, like, what is going on here? Like, is there like a sign on me? What is happening that everybody is keeps coming up to me? And of course, I'm a little anxious because I'm 8 months pregnant and everybody is just centering everything about my pregnancy. And I'm like, I just don't understand why this is all happening. Lord, you're going to have to put these pieces together for me to help me understand. And so as things progressed to that morning, like I said, I didn't really have any signs and symptoms other than what I shared, with the swelling and all of those things. And I just kept going like there was really nothing happening. I kept moving. Anybody that knows me knows I always say I don't have time to be sick. And that's even when I'm pregnant. I don't have time for this. I got to keep going. I got too many things to do. And so I just kept functioning like it was a normal everyday day for me. After I had him, in the hospital, though, there was one other thing. My blood pressure was elevated in the hospital as well after I delivered, and of and rightly so, because they had to deliver immediately, and then I had to have magnesium in order to keep me from having a stroke, because by the time they told me to go to the ER to deliver, over at the hospital to get set up for delivery, my blood pressure was already like 200s over hundreds. So they, at that point, they knew that I could possibly stroke out, and they were literally amazed that I was still literally walking and talking to them and functioning with a blood pressure that high. But my body had been compensating so long because they didn't address it or do anything about it, that my body was in fight or flight mode at that point. So, it just was functioning. And so by that time, time that I got home, I was just, it was normalized to me. I was like thinking to myself, maybe it's all in my head that something's wrong. I had the baby, nothing's happened, so, I'm gonna be fine, even with the dream in the back of the mind still though, but I'm just like, I'm fine. I've had him now. What could possibly happen? And so that's when that morning happened, to where as though, I was home and my husband was getting up to take the kids to the bus stop, and I felt the first initial pain in my chest and feeling of shortness of breath come. And but it didn't really feel that, it wasn't something so dramatic that I would really pay attention to it. It was subtle. So it was just like, it'll go away kind of thing. And I shared that with him, but about 10 to 15 minutes later, I realized that it was something bad going on. And I really didn't have time to prepare for what was going to happen.
So you're at home and you have your newborn baby with you,
Hmm.
and your husband is not there,
Right.
and then your oxygen is cut off.
Yeah.
What goes through your mind?
I'm going to die. That was it. You immediately, your natural mind takes over. But that's how strategic God is, because that's when the dream came back to me. And I thought to myself and I said, this is it. This is what I saw. And that dream coming back to me gave me hope, because I wasn't dead in the dream. So that let me know, okay, this is it. God, you have me. Now it's time for me to activate my faith. Now it's time for me to get past my natural mind and go into survival mode of, this victory is already won. Do what you need to do to get down these steps and get through this, because this is for a purpose. And so immediately I just started saying positive things to myself. I started saying to myself, you will live and not die. I started saying to myself that there's nothing impossible for God. I started saying to myself, I will be okay. And as I was going down the stairs, I just kept saying positive, anything positive that I could think of, because at that point it was kind of hard and my thoughts were getting foggy, because my oxygen was being cut off, but I was making myself stay conscious. I was fighting, and, I was thinking of, like I said, everything positive that I could pull from to give me the energy to get down those stairs, because I knew at that point I couldn't do it by myself. I knew at that point I was in God's hands. And, if it was up to me, I probably would have just laid there because I was so tired. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm exerting energy moving. So I had to have the faith enough to keep moving, knowing that I wasn't going to collapse and fall down the stairs or hit my head or do anything like that. I had the faith to keep pushing myself to say, God's not going to let anything more happen. This is what it is. Keep going, you know.
And what's remarkable to me is that, okay, so you're struggling to breathe, right? And I have asthma, so I know what it's like to struggle to breathe, right?
Yeah.
And then you get down the stairs and you try to make it to your neighbor's house.
Yes.
And she calls 911. But even with that, there was some time between when the EMT showed up and
Yes.
when you got to the hospital.
Right. And then the other thing is that it was cold. So when you can't breathe and then it's cold outside, and then I had a tank top on at the same time, all I knew when I opened the front door that my breath was going to be taken away even more. And I just had to will myself to do that, because I knew I was going to be in a worse situation once I opened the door. But I had to just will myself to do it and say, you can get across the street, you can do this, and just muster up everything in me again to get across the street and to, knock at the door, which exerted more energy, and wait for somebody to open the door and then wait for the ambulance to come. The whole time, just mentally, knowing that, okay, at any moment now I could just stop breathing.
So you're still struggling. The EMTs get there. Are you like, okay, yes, now I'm gonna be okay? And
I
was
was
that the
like,
case?
initially I was so happy, because that time just went so slow. It seemed like forever for somebody to come. When I heard the sirens, it was like music to my ears. And then, I realized it was the volunteer squad, and I was like, okay, well, I'm still going to be fine. And when they came up and they were kind of nonchalant and, not following the protocol, I got worried. I
And you
got
said they didn't even put oxygen on you, right?
no. But when I got to first, they made me walk to the ambulance, and anybody knows anything about anything medical and breathing, you're not going to make a person walk that can't breathe. They put people on gurneys for less than that. So to make me walk with respirations that were so fast, I was breathing like a fish if you take it out of the fish tank and let it flop on the floor. So they could clearly see that I was having a hard time breathing. And they walked me to the ambulance, no, nonetheless. And then when I got into the ambulance, I saw the hookup and I saw the monitor there. So I'm like, okay, they're going to monitor me and give me some oxygen and help my heart to stop dying because I was losing oxygen. They were killing my heart. I got in there, they laid me flat, so I'm up on my elbows trying to sit up to, make my breathing get better. Anybody with asthma knows they tell you get in a tripod position, which is leaning forward, to open up your airway. Because when you lay flat, you're compressing your airway, causing it to be more difficult for you to breathe. And so they were causing me more trauma than not. And mentally, again, knowing that I was in the back of the ambulance, I'm sorry, with incompetent people, was just stressful in itself. But again, I had to stay positive because I couldn't do anything. I didn't have the energy to do anything. And I had to stay positive through all of that and just keep telling myself, you will not die this way. You're not going to die this way. This is not the
And
plan
that's
for you.
significant. But first of all, you have a medical background. You know what is supposed to happen. You know
Yeah,
that you're not supposed to lay flat. You know that they shouldn't be walking you when you're having respiratory issues. You know that they're supposed to put oxygen on you. Now, imagine folks that don't have that information and that are just following
right.
protocol. Okay, this must be okay. You could have lost your life right then and there. That's why it's so important that people that are listening understand that sometimes you have to advocate for yourself. Most of the time you can't take into the account, well, these are the professionals, so you should know better. And we also have to really think about the inequities that happen again with people who are black and brown.
Yeah. Because in that because it still should not have taken that long. The hospital was probably at that time about 10 minutes away from me. So I can't understand why volunteers came, number one, for respiratory failure, and for a call so specifically traumatic, why they sent a volunteer paramedic squad. I don't understand that still. But to take so long to get there, on top of that, knowing somebody's in respiratory distress, that just even still floors me to this day.
And then you finally get to the hospital. And so in your mind it's like, okay, now I'm going to get some help.
Yes. And even though the hospital, they had a very bad reputation, we weren't originally from here. And I heard the stories about the hospital, so I'm a little anxious going to the hospital to start with, when they announced where I was going. And I heard the stories when we first moved here, and I'm like trying not to let those thoughts get in my head. And I'm like still happy because I'm going to be around doctors now. There's going to be nurses there. There's going to be people people there that's going to take care of me. And I get in the ER, and the first thing that's happening is I have all of these things going on at one time. So, no consideration for the patient. They're cutting my clothes off, which is understandable because they're trying to get leads on me for EKG and all of these things. I understand that part. But I have the respiratory therapist in there. I have a young lady that's in there that at the time I didn't know, that's my nursing school friend. And she was saying, she was trying to tell them, this is a conflict of interest. I don't want to be in here. I just graduated with her not too long ago. I can't handle this. And, they're still trying to give her orders as to what to do to me. And then I have the person that does the intake for you asking me questions and I cannot breathe. So she's asking me, what is your address and where's your insurance card? While these people are cutting my clothes off, I'm being exposed, the most vulnerable time ever. And you have the person that's doing intake in the room with me asking for insurance cards and where I live. You don't think that can wait?
Yeah.
You know, so it was
And
very, it was just a crazy experience being awake for all of that.
and then you code, and then your heart stops, and they
Yeah.
tell your husband, "We lost her."
Yeah. And when I look at the medical records, because I'm me being a nurse, I wanted to see what took place. I wanted to see like what they ran, how they ran that code, what they actually did during the code, what they put in my body. Because there's certain drugs you use for a code that can cause other issues with your health afterwards, like epinephrine and dopamine and all these things to start your heart back up. And so by my heart stopping for 10 minutes, apparently they did CPR on me and all these things. And the reason I know they did CPR is because when I came to, I literally had handprints on my chest when I looked in the mirror. And I could see the blue handprints from where they pushed so hard that, you know, my chest was blue with a handprint. And my blood pressure kept going up and up, and I guess they didn't have a clue what to do. And I like to say it was nothing but God, because the levels that my blood pressure was at, I mean, I should have been brain dead. I should have had some level of kidney failure. I should have had something go wrong, because I was without oxygen for 4 minutes, for a couple of 45 minutes, I believe, before I got to the hospital. And then on top of that, to code for 10 more minutes and be without oxygen for another 10 minutes is just crazy. And to come out of that still able to talk, to come out of that sane, in my right mind, not a vegetable, not, comatose, not any kind of organ failure, not anything.
That's
I had to,
God.
yeah, I had,
And let me tell you, audience, y'all, we ain't gonna give you all of it. You gotta experience this movie. But let me just say this. After they come, and imagine this is your family member, they tell her husband, her church family, her family, she's gone. We lost her.
yeah,
And what they do is to start praying for people in the waiting room of the hospital to bring them to Christ. While they are in the midst of all of this trauma,
yeah,
while they're in the midst of their grief, while they've just been told that their loved one is gone, that they didn't even know that it was that serious, they're in the waiting room praying for people. That
yeah,
just blows my mind.
yeah. That's exactly what they did, because they felt like, you know, God was going to perform a miracle. And what better way, to show God gratitude for the miracle he was about to perform than to bring other people to Christ, because that's our mission. That's ultimately what we do as disciples. So they had to put, their emotions kind of to the side, and they just had to be thankful to God for the time that they shared with me if I was gone, for the baby that was just born if I was gone. And they just had to, they felt like they just needed to show gratitude to God, and they felt like God was going to perform a miracle. They had the belief that he was going to perform a miracle. So in their minds, why are we going to be sad and weep and spend this time weeping? Of course my husband was a totally different scenario. He was praying and all that, but of course he was still sad. But he knew that he had to have that strength and that fortitude to show God, hey, I'm still your disciple no matter what happens. I'm still on your mission, and I'm still going to do your purpose. Yes, this is happening, but I believe you. I have faith in you, and I'm just going to keep pressing forward.
And that is more than a matter of fact statement.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for the movie, because sometimes we don't even operate in the power that we have inside as people who say we believe in God. It takes a lot for your husband, for your church family to say, after a doctor comes and says, she's gone, we lost her, we don't, her heart is not beating, to say, God, I trust you so much that I'm
Yeah.
going to keep on praying because I believe that you have the power to bring her back like you did Lazarus. That right there, that's a true testimony to
Yeah.
your faith. And I have to say that a lot of times it ever says amen when the spirit of Yah God is present. He is God of all. Oftentimes, we who say we are believers
Yeah.
can't even believe that we gonna make it to the corner if our car broke down. Can't even believe that that little measly bill is gonna get paid, or that rent is gonna get paid, or
Right.
that loved one is gonna be okay, or we're gonna make it through tomorrow. Let
Right.
alone being able to have that much faith to believe that I believe God can raise this loved one from whatever that the enemy has planned.
Right. And when like I told you, God is strategic. So he gave instructions, for me to leave for my husband. I couldn't tell him right away because timing is everything. And I had specific instructions to leave for my husband. And, I believe that through those instructions from God, they had just increased their faith even more, to know that it was foreseen, and to know, hey, she's going to be okay. We may not see this with our physical eye, and I know what the doctor is saying, but God, and that's always the but God, dot, 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 because you never know what to expect after that. But our words formulate beliefs, and then our beliefs turn into how we behave. And so, if we speak positive things, and then we think positive things, and then we behave in a positive manner. And so, with them praying and them just, and trusting that through the salvation of other people, that God was going to work a miracle in my life, that's what actually manifested and happened, and they were able to witness that, in the power of God and the authority that they walked in. So it even taught them about the authority that they walked in and the power of their own words. So it was like a triple fold message and lesson that was learned from that situation. And I believe everybody that walked away from that situation, life was touched or changed in a specific way.
So a couple things. One, it's important for folks to hear that God began preparing Miasha before her heart stopped.
Yeah.
Through his intervention and conversation with her, it was
Yeah.
confirmed through one of the sisters in the church, right? It was confirmed through a dream. So
Yeah.
when we say God is talking to us, we want to listen because we
Right.
want to know what the instructions are so that I could deal with whatever the trial is. God, let me know how I'm supposed to handle this. Oftentimes we go to God when the thing happens,
Yeah.
but God is speaking to us way before the thing happens and after the thing happens.
And the key is being open. So you can't ask God to share something with you or tell you something and then shut down and start to question it. Because a lot of times our minds, our analytical thinking will get in the way, and we'll start to say to ourselves, is that really God? Is that me? You know, is that the enemy telling me to do something? but you weigh it by the word, and if it's in alignment with the word of God, then you know that it's God trying to speak to you, to instruct you and tell you something. You always pray to him about whatever comes to you, because we know that the enemy is the master of lies. He don't have no truth in him. And we know sometimes he can disguise himself in a way that we can be tricked and manipulated, if we're not careful. So even when you have visions and dreams, you have to seek God to make sure that it aligns with his word. And that's how you ensure that you are really listening to God and not the enemy or not yourself. Because a lot of times we'll do things in and of ourselves as well.
So one of the things you talk about is that you were aware that
Mm-hmm.
you saw a light and
Mm-hmm.
that you felt a hand walking with you. So here you are walking to what we can only imagine as glory,
Mm-hmm.
on your way to be with the Almighty. And what was that like?
It was peaceful and serene. It was like you have no worries. Um, I didn't have a thought of anything natural. I was just trying to get to the light. I was like, it was so beautiful. And then I was holding a hand, but I was like, I dare not look, over there, because I'm like so happy to be holding the hand and walking. So I'm thinking to myself, yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I shall fear no evil, because I'm in this tunnel and it's kind of dark and then there's light down there. And, I'm just like, this is my comforter walking with me, just guiding me and directing me towards this light. And I was just like, it was like an overwhelming euphoria. Like, you can't even describe it, because it was so bright, that light, and beautiful, and just the touch of the hand that I was holding, it was just so magnificent. It was wild.
So you get to the end of the tunnel.
No, I don't reach the end of the tunnel. It's almost like the Star Trek movie when he's like, beam me up, Scotty, the little lines and the time span that takes place, and you see those lines all around you like a vortex. So I was steadily walking, and those lines weren't there at first. And it was like somebody turned on a vacuum cleaner. It's like I heard, not yet, and then I was like, it was like a heartbreaking moment for me, because I knew that I was going to be taken away from that light, and I didn't know what was going to happen after that, so I heard, not yet. Then the light started to get further and further away, like I was being sucked backwards. And so when I opened my eyes again, I saw the bright light, because, at the time I didn't realize, but in the hospital, they have those bright lights on you whenever they do a procedure. So, and my eyes had been shut for 3 days. So, seeing light for the first time, you're kind of squinting. It's like looking at the sun. So I'm thinking, okay, so maybe I went backwards to heaven, because the light was so bright. And the funny part was, I had this blonde haired, blue eyed male nurse. And so I'm sitting there looking at him, and he looks like something out of Cocoon when they took their skin off, because I hadn't seen in 3 days. So I said, am I dead? I whispered it. I'm thinking he's like an angel or something. He's like, no. And then I look over at that table and I see a breast pump, and I immediately remember the baby and all the natural stuff. And I looked at him and I was like, you, and I pointed to my breast, and he was like, no. And I was like, whew, like I was so upset and thinking that this man pumped my breast, that I said, is that really the first thing I thought about? Seriously. But even through that, I still had my sense of humor. So, that was the first thing that I thought. And when I realized that I had made it, at first I was sad. I'm not going to lie. First, I was sad because I was like, now I have to deal with all of this natural stuff, pain, and I have to deal with recovery, and I have to deal with all of this stuff. Lord, I thank you, though. But I have to deal with all of this, and I could have been at that magnificent light, peaceful, no pain, no anything, and I had to like will myself to be like, okay, you're back. Now it's about doing God's will and his purpose so you can get to that light when God's ready for you.
Purpose. When
Yes.
people started telling you all that had transpired, what did you think about it?
I didn't know what to think because it was almost like they were reading me, like telling me a story, like it wasn't me. Like I was like, how could I be here and where I was at the same time? So I was like, you sure that I was doing this stuff? I don't remember any of it. My sister was telling me I was dancing. They were telling me I was answering questions. I was like, while I was unconscious, they were like, yes. And I don't remember any of it. It's like 3 days of my life are absolutely gone. But they tell me all. I told them the surgeon I wanted to have if I had to have heart surgery while I was out in a coma. I named the doctor in the hospital. I'm like, really? And it was a doctor that I previously saw do heart surgery doing my clinical residency as a nurse. And he made such an impact on me that I was like, if I ever had to have surgery done, I would have him do it. And that's what I
Because
told them.
that's the other thing that people need to know. Maisha's heart started again, but then she was in a coma for 3 days. And during that time, and I'm not going to tell y'all, but there was some spiritual stuff that was happening
Yeah.
during that time.
Yeah. I like to say God is so awesome. And I like to joke and say I'm Lazarine, you know.
You really are. You really are.
And I just
So
want to understand that, God's still performing miracles today. I'm pretty sure there's tons of other miracles out there that he's performing that people just aren't sharing.
I'm going to say this. We have about 10 minutes left, but let me tell you something. From the beginning, I knew that this was of God, from the very beginning. And while we were filming the church scene, right, there's some things in the church scenes that are very powerful. You guys, we very soon the film will hit. But while we were filming the church scene, I'm seeing all of these people in this church, right? Some of the regular parishioners within the church. In the front of the altar, first of all, are canes. And
Yes.
what the apostle pastor explains to me that these were canes for people who could not walk. And that's
Yeah.
where they left their canes. So as I'm standing there and I'm watching, I'm directing, I'm looking around, this feeling came over me. Because one of the things that happened is that everyone who was in that church came to me and told me about their near death experience. It was like the House of Miracles, and how God that either that they had stage 4 cancer or their heart. All of this was happening. And I'm standing there going, okay, something's going on, Lord. Like something
Yeah.
is truly going on right here. And I could feel it was almost like the Holy Spirit rested upon me, and I could not control my emotions. All I could do was say, oh my God, like what's happening here to me? Because I could feel his power and his presence. And
Yeah.
then they tell me about this wall that starts dripping oil when the
Yeah.
spirit is really high. I'm done for real. So I say all that to say, I know I am a witness that this movie, this experience, this is more than just we're creating a movie. This is about God, what he's ushering in. It's about being
Yes.
obedient to him. It's about a message that he wants to give to the world. He wants us to know that he is still the almighty, all powerful, and he is still in the miracle
Yeah.
business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that there's no God like him. He is definitely a miracle working God.
Absolutely. And we, one of the things that I love about Miasha is that even throughout everything that she's gone through, and the enemy continues to test all of us, continues to test her faith. She's steadfast. Her husband's faith is steadfast. her family are steadfast. It's like it's God for us. Period. That's it. It's God for us. And there's so much that's happened, folks, in this time, like the pandemic, the racism that has always been there that bubbled to the surface, the takeover of Capitol Square, the all the hatred that's happening, these mass shootings. If you don't know God, if you don't have someone that you believe in that's going to make it all right, Lord have mercy on you, because that's the only
Mm,
thing that's going to help us.
that's absolutely true. We got to have hope, 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 hope. And you can't be blind to
Absolutely.
see going on around you. A lot of time that is what the enemy uses to distract us and discourage us as believers. God doesn't love you. Look what's happening. God doesn't love you. Look at your health. God doesn't love you. Look at the state of your family. And he comes and whispers those thoughts in our ears. And if we aren't careful and we aren't girded up with the word or in our prayer life, or we don't have a support system, then the enemy can come and tear you down. So you have to be on guard at all times. We are definitely soldiers for God. We have to be able to recognize all of his distractions that come up, because they're not always in your face. Sometimes they're very subtle. Sometimes he uses people that you love the most to use against you. So we always have to remain, conscious of our surroundings and who we allow to speak into our lives, who we allow to be around us. We just got to be careful.
Absolutely. Everett says we serve a living God, living
Yeah.
through his faithful servant. That's right. God is alive. He is alive and well, and we would want to tap into him. And I want to add about Everett. One of the things that he showed me during our filming is he has a picture of Miasha. One as she's, I think she's younger in that picture. But then he also has a picture of her when she was connected to all of these tubes. And I'm telling you, you could see in her like, oh my God, I almost like it was hard for me to look at that picture.
Yeah.
But that's what he experienced. And the other thing is, it takes the power of two, right? Their union, it took them both together to be on one accord with their faith. Because
Yeah.
it takes a lot while his wife is lying there, one when her heart stopped beating, and then when the doctors are saying she's in a coma, it doesn't look good, we don't know, to say, you know what, no, you don't know who my daddy is, and I'm still going to
Yeah.
remain faithful to that. That takes a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah, it does. And then at the time, he had five small children. He had to figure out how he was going to continue to function with, because he was out of work at the same time. But God put everything together and orchestrated everything so that he didn't want for anything. Didn't suffer financially, didn't suffer mentally, really, because he had the family support and the church support there. And everybody just chipped in, and it's like they knew what to do. They all just kind of played their part.
Well, I'm telling y'all that y'all are in for a treat. This movie is nothing but the power of God. And we are so excited. We did 2 days of filming. We got through most of the filming. We still have another day of shooting. And then we have to add some things to it, get into editing. But I want to project that the film should be ready for viewing. And we have to see how that looks.
Yeah.
Talk to Mike about what viewing looks like. It's probably, I'm going to say August, just to allow time for editing. But
Yeah.
Maisha, tell us what you'd
Yes.
like to say about the movie, about the experience.
I'm just really excited. It was so phenomenal working with everybody, just having so much faith together in one room. It's nothing like having a bunch of believers in one room at one time, and having great directors and producers and videographers, to help kind of get you through the situations, because there was a moment when I broke down and, had to get made to go get some water because I was in denial about it. So, it really hit home for me. And to have that spiritual support, from my husband and you guys, it really, really meant a lot to have that, and to help me get through this, because, it couldn't have been done without everybody as a team, working hard together to get it completed. And I believe it's just going to change people's lives when they see it. I believe that. I really sincerely believe it's going to bring people to Christ. I believe it's going to, ignite a new belief in miracles in people, lead and guide and direct people, maybe even change some churches into putting back into practice the teachings of miracles and getting back to like your Kenneth Copeland and your Benny Hinn's and all of those people that believe in miracles being performed during service.
And miracles, sometimes we look for this sky opening miracles, but
Yeah.
I think we have miracles that happen every single. The fact that we wake up and have breath is a miracle. We
I
don't
said
have to have breath.
breathing, all of that is miracles. Being able to walk,
Absolutely.
you know, all a miracle.
Miasha has written her life story in a book. Miasha, what's the name of it, and where can people get a copy of your book?
It's Miracles of Life: How I Survived a Silent Killer, and you can purchase it on Amazon, or either you can inbox me on any of the social media platforms. On Instagram, I am MGE, and then on Facebook, I am Miasha Gilliam. So you can reach out to me, and I can send you links. I can send the links here in the chat or whatever, for you to be able to get in touch with me.
Additionally, Miasha is doing some crowdfunding to support the movie. It can be very expensive doing movies. So this is like planting a seed. This is like tide. So we encourage you. You can hit Miasha up on any of her social media channels if you like to donate to supporting the movie, getting the movie completed, getting the movie edited, getting the movie distributed. Miasha, again, give them your information if they like to contribute to donating to the film.
Okay, that's it would be better Cash App because it's $ and then just my name, Miasha Gilliam L. And or either like I said, you can inbox me and I can send you the link to the fundraiser on the Facebook page. So whatever is convenient for you.
So I'm gonna see if I can put it on here on my phone. I'll put
Okay.
the it's Cash App what?
Oh, $, Miasha Gilliam. Just my name, everything. First letter is capital of each name, each last each name. So
Miasha
capital M and then capital G.
Gilliam L. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I can put it from my phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. I am so excited to be talking to you. You know, I love you. We family now. And
Yep.
as again, I encourage. We will let you know when the film is complete. It is nothing but the power of God. It's about wonder working miracles, and so look forward to it.
Yep. Peace.
All right. This is your girl, Valerie, with Sister Talk with Valerie, your chocolate smoothie. And our show airs on every Friday at 7:30 on Untapped Music Radio. You can tune in. We also have a YouTube channel, which is Sister Talk with Valerie. And also tap into my sister Terry, who is actually on tonight. She's probably on right now while I'm talking. But and she probably like, why are you doing the show at the same time as my but we love you guys. Thank you for joining us. Remember, look for the miracles. If you can't find them, look for the miracles. God bless you. We love you. Thank you, Miasha.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.